With business operations dramatically interrupted by the COVID-19 virus outbreak, questions have arisen about the extent of business interruption coverage. I'm John Weber for AM Best TV. With us to discuss a new AM Best commentary on the subject is Samiksha Gupta, an AM Best Rating Services financial analyst, and Sam Hanig, senior industry analyst. And Samiksha, let's start with you. The title of the commentary is Social Inflation May Affect COVID-19 Business Interruption Losses. Could you discuss how the social inflation dynamic plays into this situation?
Sure. So we expect that insurers will likely suffer potential business interruption and related contingent business interruption losses until the pandemic dies down. And this could produce a big increase in social inflation because of the complexity of BI insurance provisions, which may lead to coverage disagreements between insured and insurers, making it highly likely for businesses to sue their insurers in an attempt to access their BI coverage for losses relating to COVID-19. It is also well known that when the language in an insurance policy is ambiguous, meaning that it is susceptible to more than one reasonable interpretation, courts will likely adopt the interpretation that is most favorable to the insured. That is, ambiguous insuring agreements will be interpreted more broadly, and ambiguous exclusions and limitations will be interpreted more narrowly. And with the impacts of social inflation becoming more severe in recent years for insurers, legal judgments may be more unfavorable to the insurers than in prior years. And what can further complicate coverage assessments is the ongoing consideration of legislative bills regarding possible benefit payments to businesses by including pandemic risks as a covered peril. Should that become a state-specific law, policy exclusions would be superseded and leave insurers on the hook for losses that would otherwise be excluded as they were never considered in the underwriting analysis.
Sam, Hurricane Katrina and storms following gave rise to an intense debate over wind versus water. Do you expect business interruption to be a lightning rod of sorts during this crisis and after it abates?
I do. I think there is something to be concerned about. The single biggest issue pertaining to business interruption insurance going forward is going to be, what does it mean when a structure has physical damage? In most instances, business interruption claims require physical loss or damage for coverage to be triggered. Presently, there are a number of pending litigations surrounding this exact question, and opinions differ. There have been some instances in the past of business interruption insurance applying in the absence of actual physical damage. For instance, if there's been a road that leads to a business and this road becomes inaccessible, in those instances, business insurance coverage may apply. Further, there could be instances where a business interruption claim would be valid due to a business closing when civil authority requirements when no damage had occurred. But most often, a business interruption insurance policy will require some form of physical damage to the structure in order for coverage. Whether or not there is actual or if a surface can just be wiped down to clean it is a question that will need to be addressed. In 2014, a federal court in New Jersey found a property can sustain physical damage without actual structural alteration in a situation where ammonia was released in a factory, and the factory had to be cleared of this ammonia before work could resume. When it comes to COVID-19, the question of what it means to sustain physical damage is at the heart of the current court cases between insureds and insurers to determine if business interruption insurance should apply.
Now, Samiksha, the commentary notes that policies are highly specialized depending on the insured's needs. What are some of the complexities that likely will come into play as claims come in?
Sure. So first aspect is that BI insurance policies are tailored to each client, and how pandemic diseases will be treated on policies is really dependent on the contract language and its interpretation. In many cases, there are policy provisions which can create ambiguity in coverage. For example, requirement of direct physical damage to premises as a prerequisite to coverage, or denial of access provision, but not necessarily covering businesses ceasing operations voluntarily, or policies containing limited bacteria or virus coverage. Such scenarios may arise in claims and litigations and will require courts to step in, interpret, and provide outcomes. Another aspect is how silence may be viewed deadly for commercial insurers. This means that the absence of specific words addressing pandemic risks in the insurance policy language will put more carriers on the hook to cover claims down the road. While insurance experts would be correct in asserting that insurance policies silent on communicable diseases traditionally do not cover such losses, it is yet to be determined what may occur with unexpected court rulings or new laws and regulations.
Now, a lot of people have called for a federal backstop. Sam, do you think that that's something that could be in the works?
At this time, the matter is still being debated. So a federal backstop or federal relief fund for businesses and workers affected by COVID-19 is certainly still a possibility. In the past, following the terror attacks of 9/11, reinsurers absorbed a lot of economic loss. Not wanting to be in that situation again, reinsurers and then insurers began excluding terrorism-related losses, so businesses were left without terrorism insurance. This was very problematic, not just for the loss of insurance coverage, but particularly for businesses whose lenders and regulators required terrorism insurance. So to address the lack of terrorism insurance availability, Congress enacted the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act, TRIA, and subsequent renewals, TRIPRA, to provide a federal backstop for terrorism. So insurers would be more upfront about offering terrorism coverage, and if the insurer selected, losses would be ceded to the federal backstop. So here we are today, still in the middle of this black swan event, where a lot of policies already have a pandemic exclusion in place. Prospectively, all of these businesses could be left without protection in the event of a future pandemic, which we've already seen is causing devastating economic impacts to businesses. For a couple of weeks, industry leaders have already been calling for a federal backstop similar to TRIA for pandemic-related losses, and a federal solution may actually be in the works. On March 18th, Representative Maxine Waters proposed a package of bills which included the Pandemic Risk Insurance Act, or PRIA, which was modeled after TRIA, and this act is supposed to, according to the press release, create a reinsurance program similar to the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act for pandemics by capping the total insurance losses that insurance companies would face. So there very well could be a federal legislation enacted to address whether the insurance needed for pandemics, but the applicable wording for the coverage is still up in the air. Some in the insurance industry are asking for the bill to apply retroactively to include COVID-19 exposure and possibly combine PRIA and TRIA into a consolidated piece of legislation. Where COVID-19 events are still unfolding and litigation is likely to proceed for years, some kind of backstop may be necessary for a couple of reasons. First, regardless of some of these legal battles result favorably for the insureds, insurers may further tighten the wording on their exclusions. And second, a number of states have proposed legislation that makes pandemic a covered cause of loss, even if it's already excluded on the policy. If these legislations get signed into law and survive any legal challenges, insurers may opt to pull out of those states, leaving the businesses with fewer interruption insurance options.
That was senior industry analyst Sam Hanig, along with Samiksha Gupta, an AM Best Rating Services financial analyst. You can find the full AM Best commentary online at ambest.com. For AM Best TV, I'm John Weber.